I'm psychologist Dr. Bryan, and in today's snapshot, we'll be exploring highlights from my conversation with Bobby Angel. We'll be talking about his experience in the CPMAP program, where he was trained and is now certified as a Catholic mentor, and what that means for integration of faith and psychology. This is the Catholic Center Show. Let's talk about integration. So oftentimes I have to explain what I mean by integration to guests and to the audience. Broadly speaking, it's psychology and faith, right? You have now been trained through the CPMAP, which many of our listeners probably don't know what that is. So I work for Catholic Psych, and we provide an alternative service to traditional psychotherapy, which integrates the Catholic faith with the science of psychology. And we've been doing that successfully for a while. So we decided to start training other people to do it. And I think you are part of the first cohort ever, I believe. And so you've been doing this for roughly, a little over a year now. I know you have a history in ministry and you're very comfortable with matters of faith. Now that you have the psychology piece, what's integration to you now? How's it changed?
Yeah, I was blessed to be a part of the first cohort coming through the Catholic Psych Institute's model of applied personalism, which is bringing together solid, the best of psychology, I'd say, with a grounded Catholic anthropology and spirituality into a full, like, what is the human person? What do we mean by that? Like, what are we shooting for? Because I want to be a healthy, thriving human. Great. What does that even look like? How do I know how to live a good life? Like, how do I know who I'm made to be? And the beauty of having like a solid like scaffolding of architecture of like you're called to greatness in the masculine genius you've been given or the feminine genius you've been given, and let's figure out how that may be that may have been wounded in your life, that calling to love and be loved, like how that may have been askew in your childhood and your examples of parenting, and how you've been wounded by a relationship, because we're made in the image and likeness of God, who is relationship, and we're healed by a relationship, even though we may be wounded and hurt by a relationship in the middle.
Yeah.
And what Catholic Psych, what this this time and education is given me is just like, it's the toolbox underneath the toolbox. You lift it up and there's even more tools and you're like, whoa, Dad, you got even more down here. It's that, like, I've been doing ministry ever since I got out of youth ministry, but to be given this new set of psychological tools in accompanying people and giving corrective emotional experiences,
Oh, I
and
love it.
in
That's
like,
a buzzword.
yeah, in like parenting parts of a person. It's like, you've been holding on to this since you were 8. You're not 8 anymore, but you're reacting like you're 8. So let's talk about that. I mean, it's stuff that I had a glimpse of in my students, but it's just at such a deeper like pitch now. It's been such it's I am a better husband, father, and man because of my past year in this program.
Oh, that's so exciting. It's really great to hear. Yeah, and to look at how our history and our psychology and those relationships and those patterns and those dynamics are actually projected onto our spiritual life
Yeah.
is a unique thought. Oftentimes we have an idea of who God is. We're not actually talking about God. We're talking about our mom and dad. And our first experience of God that occurs when we're children, because everything we say about our parents as children, we eventually say about God: will you protect me? Will you guide me? Will you nurture me? Will you provide for me? So we take that early experience of God and assume that it's true about him later on. So if our parents hurt us in a particular way, we assume that God is going to hurt us in the same way. So unlocking some of our psychology helps our spiritual development. It's great.
Which I had a classmate in the seminary. I say again a lot, by the way. I realize that's my. I look back on videos.
Verbal tick. Yeah.
Yeah, and a friend of mine pointed out. Both my wife and I do this. I don't know when we picked it up, but I haven't even made the first point. But I'll say again, like what am I referencing? My friend in seminary, he's now a priest, and I remember him rolling his eyes and be like, enough about the wounds, enough about the childhood wounds.
Mm.
And yet you realize, no, it's so much of the template for how we see the world, how we see God. How was
Even
I?
that's a defense, right? Enough
Yeah,
about the wounds.
yeah,
That is a defense.
which I knew, like, at the comedic level, like, I
Yeah.
you want to talk about it, man? Like,
Yeah.
but it is a frustrating, like, why haven't I moved past this? Why can't we move past it? Because it's our very first template, and so it does take tremendous healing and vulnerability to go to these places.
What are you working on in yourself right now?
Um,
We have this spirit of conversion in at Catholic Psych where we're never a finished product. We're
right.
always working on ourselves, and who we are affects our clinical work. So we emphasize working on yourself. So that might feel like an intrusive question to some of the people watching this, but that's common. That's a common exchange in our world, right? So what that being said, what are you working on right now?
No, it's par for the course. And as I referenced earlier, again, that perfectionistic part that is still wanting to do everything right the first time, that wants the document to be perfect as soon as it hits the Word doc.
What's the narrative? If it's not perfect, then
If it's not perfect, then I'm a fraud.
and if I'm a fraud, then
Then I'm not lovable.
there we go. Good for you. You jumped right to the right to the core of it. Yeah.
And
No,
it's
it's true. It's earning love, right? It's such a I'd say that's the
yeah,
most common theme of all the people that I've ever worked with. It's confusing what I can do or what my gifts are or my secondary characteristics with myself and my identity. And I'm only loved for those accidents versus substance, right? Like a good parent will communicate to a child, especially a father, that it is good that you exist. I'm happy you're here. No matter what you do, you're loved. And we know that. And we can say that about other people, but sometimes it just doesn't apply to us. And so I have to be good looking enough, smart enough, rich enough, holy enough, whatever. And then I will be loved. And if I'm not, I'm out in the cold.
it's crazy too because my parents never put this pressure on me. I feel like I've put this pressure on myself. It was never verbalized to me to get straight A's or to get into this college or I'm disappointed. It was this like look what I did, look what I can do almost. And even that's like where did that come from? So I'm still on this journey of like
I'm not
it
I'm not sure how hard to push right now.
I know I can feel
I got I got to
feel it.
take my psychologist hat off and let you enjoy the conversation. But go on.
Put the gamer hat back on.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and man, it's and you think you've like hit the bottom. You're like, "Oh yeah, I've confronted that lie or I've gotten to the
Oh
bottom
yeah.
of that." And it's like, "Oh no, it's still there. It still
Nope.
can operate. It
And
can still hold me back from a place of real freedom."
and not to diminish any work that you've already done on a particular issue.
Right.
It's just that there's more, right? Oftentimes we encounter clients that are like, "I worked on my problems with my mom or my dad, and I'm good. We're done. I've forgiven them." It's like, well, I'm not so sure.
We're talking about it today, aren't we?
Yeah. And I don't and I like and I want to give you credit for doing that. You've done a lot of good work and it's great.
Right.
And I'm glad you've forgiven them and processed some emotions, but there's probably some more to look at here because oftentimes we see the effects and then induce the cause. It's like wind on the trees. Like we can't see the wind, but we know it's there
Mm.
because the leaves are blowing. A lot of times we'll see that in people's behaviors that we don't know exactly what happened, but we can see based on their behaviors that something indeed did happen.
And how you said earlier, and I've noticed this in ministry, like I can give the best advice to someone else,
Mm-hmm.
a student or someone comes up to me at an event, and I can give the best advice, like the most God ordained, like they need to hear, they're crying, and yet I can't receive it myself. Like,
Well, because you have emotions. It's easier to tell someone else to do something because there's no emotional investment for
not even
ourselves.
not even do something to tell someone like they are a beloved child of God, like they are lovable
Mm,
just as they are. But me, but I can't make a mistake though.
right. You can't make a mistake. Don't make a mistake.
Which can we? I'm not diverting. Can we throw that back to gaming for a sec? Is there like a
Sure.
chance? Is there a chance of attempting perfectionism?
Well, don't you see that with those speed runs? You ever go on YouTube and see people try and
Which is
speed run
so
Mario Brothers
which is
or
so
just
like
flawless?
I know, and I also I'm repulsed at that because like you're
Does it appeal to you though? Is there a part of you
no
that's like, no?
no because it just
Hmm.
robs the enjoyment of the game. Like
Yeah.
this was meant to be 60 hours, and you sped run it like. But I mean, like the completionism, like you got 100%
Oh
on this
yeah.
mission, like
Achievements too. I think achievements,
mhm,
which are not part of. I mean, there's no reward in the game for achievements besides saying I completed a
exactly.
task.
I got a trophy.
Yeah. Right. Right. But I mean, most of the time there's a reward system where if I complete this, I become more powerful. But achievements are it's just a list
Yep.
that are it's probably like the fourth tab in into the UI, you know. But yeah, I think people are attracted to that. I am not. I don't care about achievements.
Well,
You like them?
especially no, especially like a one-player game. It'll be like you achieve this. I'm like, who cares?
Right.
I'm not showing it to anyone.
Well, uh, you don't play PC games, but have you heard of Steam before?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so Steam allows you to download games online for your
Yeah,
computer,
my friend has
and
a Steam Deck.
yeah, and so the for Steam, they like as part of your profile, it'll say what percentage of games you've completed, including the achievements. So they know that it has like you can still show off your
Yeah,
achievements
yeah.
in a certain context. Yeah. Um, what's the next thing? This is an interesting question. I don't. This may be an impossible question to ask you. It may be an unfair question to ask you. So you're talking about this perfectionism that you're working on now. What's the next thing that you have to work on that you're putting off?
How did you know? How did you know? There's another book manuscript I'm working on, and I have had the hardest time working on it.
Why?
I don't
You don't
know
have to tell
why.
us what it is,
I don't
but what's the resistance? What's the internal resistance?
I don't know why. I'm trying to figure it out. And in fact, I listened to a podcast on procrastinating recently. It was like, why I'm
Hmm.
procrastinating writing this book by listening to a podcast on procrastinating.
Is it too big in your mind?
It's a cocktail of it's too big, comparing myself to other authors,
Hmm.
of like what am I even trying to say? Who cares? Who's gonna read it at the end of the day? Like what difference is like oh man, there's a lot of negative self talk.
All parts are welcome here.
I know.
You have a critical part that's just trying to protect you from being hurt. It's all good.
So yeah, this podcast was talking about that. Like it's a self-esteem mechanism. Like procrastinating is it doesn't make sense from a survival lens. Like you're shooting yourself in the foot, but it's more of a self-esteem ego um, device to say like, well, I could have done better if I had more time.
It
Yep.
doesn't make sense in terms of task completion, like looking outward, but in terms of within yourself, it's logical. Like I said, it's it's preventing you from sometimes it's taking on something too big, or you have these voices that are trying to protect you from being rejected. If you have this other part that's perfectionistic, that's saying I can't make a mistake, and then there's a lot of risk of making mistakes in your next project, well, let's just hold off on that for a bit. It's understandable.
I'm wondering, even how did you know? This is like the thing that's weighing on me as of late is,
I mean, listen, you wanted to pray to the Holy Spirit before we started. Don't blame me.
well, I shouldn't be surprised. And also we had a new baby, and I'm not making an excuse. And I genuinely thought this is the easy stage before he's moving. Like, I'll have no problem finishing this first draft before he's crawling. But the problem is he's very like needy. Babies are needy, go figure. He wants to be held.
Some, right?
Yeah, this kid wants to be held. He wants to be upright. He wants me to like walk around with him. So I'll do stuff one-handed, but that has
Oh,
also been,
it's hard to focus.
yeah, it's thrown me for a loop in a beautiful way of surrendering to say, "Okay, God, help me be okay with this." Like, help me love my son, like to not get frustrated
and
as
and
this.
god you and God uses where we are psychologically, right?
Yeah,
So perhaps you have some personal hangups that you need to work through, but from a providential perspective, it's not the time to work on the project, right?
right,
And maybe
right.
he's slowing you down by giving you an active son, and that's fine in terms of the big picture of your entire life. Not yet, right? What a great segue. You'll
Not
see them
yet.
again, but not yet.
Not yet. Not yet.